everyone, happy Monday. My name is Rebecca and I'm a writer who also happens to have ADHD. I am not a trained mental health professional or a medical professional. If you're seeking help, please seek out those people in your community. I am here telling you my experiences with having ADHD and being a writer at the same time. First, I want to talk about my new business that I started. If you didn't know, I started Roundtable Editorial. We're the first editorial offering writers access to a team of professional book editors for their manuscripts. So if you want to check that out below, please do. All the links and stuff are there. We're also crowdfunding to fund our first year in business. As you know, a lot of business close after the first year because they don't have the capital to continue on. So thank you so much for your support, and on to today's topic. Today's kind of going to be about two things together because I think it's really important. First of all, I had it slated as just me talking about sensory issues with ADHD, things like clothing irritations and stuff like that. I'm still going to talk about that. And in conjunction with that, I'm going to talk about why ADHD is not a superpower and why it bugs me when people tell me that it is, even though they don't have ADHD and they don't know what it's like. First, why ADHD is not a superpower. And one of the main reasons it's not a superpower is because of the sensory issues that comes along with it. Now, this might just be me. I know a couple of other people with ADHD who have similar things. I have a lot of sensory issues, and that's with sound, like I discussed in my last video, and it's also with things like clothes. So if my clothes have really extra itchy tags in them, I go crazy. If it has like seams that are too rough on my skin, it'll rub me literally raw, even though on a normal person it wouldn't. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but every once in a while it will just heighten itself. And this weekend specifically has been extra tough with sensory issues. I've had a lot of panic attacks over necklines that are too tight. It's been cold, so scarves around my neck, collars that are too small, and things that are just too tight. We have to wear a lot of layers because it's very cold, so having the extra tight layer underneath has been extremely constricting, and it feels like I'm just being confined into this one thing, and it's really sent me into quite a few panic attacks that have been difficult to navigate because I have to take the dogs out in the mornings on a really long walk. So being on that walk in all the layers, when I get home, I'm like ripping it all off because it's just so much. I really have to be careful to wear very loose things, especially if I'm going into a day where I'm trying to write. Now on to why people think it's a superpower. I think there's two components to this. It's one, the hyperfocus, and two, the creativity. Now, I do want to say that hyperfocus isn't a well-studied thing. It's a very contentious thing that scientists haven't fully agreed on. So when I say hyperfocus, I am talking from a personal experience, and I'm talking from conversations I've had with other people who've had things like hyperfocus. So hyperfocus is when you kind of zoom in on one thing and you do it constantly and you can't be distracted from it. I've definitely experienced this before, and to be honest, it can be a little scary. I won't eat, I won't take a shower, everything is ignored at this point, and it doesn't happen often to me, and I cannot control when it's going to happen or what's going to happen. So I might hyper focus on organizing or painting, and I can't control if it's writing. I don't know if other people can control this. I wish I could. If you have any tips and tricks of how to hyper focus on the thing. The one thing I have been able to do is make sure it's the first thing I do in the morning. It's not guaranteed that it'll make me hyper focus if it's the first thing I do, but it gives me a better chance of hyper focusing on it, if that makes sense. So that's the one thing that I found that kind of helps. But otherwise, I really can't control where my hyperfocus goes. So if I start hyperfocusing on something else, chances are I'm actually not going to get any writing done, despite wanting to. I can think about it, and I can tell myself, okay, you need to switch tasks and write. But if I'm in hyperfocus, I can't take myself out of it, no matter how much I'm begging myself to. And often, if I'm in hyperfocus, I'm not even thinking about writing. I'm just thinking about the task at hand. The second thing that I think people are talking about when they say ADHD is a writer's superpower is the creativity that comes with ADHD. That's true. We are very creative, and there's a huge benefit to that. There's a huge benefit to our stories because of that. But it also means that a lot of times we have a ton of interests, and oftentimes they're time-consuming creative interests. Interior design, painting, plants, whatever it is. It's usually things that actually take away from writing, and we do get a lot of ideas, but I can tell you right now that we often forget as many ideas as we have because we misplace something we write it on, or we don't even write it down fast enough as our brain is working. So we forget a lot of them, and it's honestly overwhelming to have a lot of ideas sometimes, because there are occasions when I just want to focus on something, but my mind won't shut up, and it's having a lot of really creative ideas that I want to write down, but I really need to do the task that I'm trying to do instead, and it takes me completely out of everything, and I start to get very what's the word? I start to dissociate almost a little bit. It's not quite as dramatic, but I do zoom out of the task. I zoom out of the physical place, and I'm just kind of in this floaty idea headspace that they call, what's it called? That. Something astronaut. I forget what it is. But creativity comes with its own downsides as well. So calling it a superpower is really frustrating when I wish it was a superpower and I can see the benefit in it, but it isn't exactly, I think, what people are thinking when they think superpower, ADHD, you're a writer, you have so many ideas, you can hyperfocus, it's a perfect storm. Sometimes it is 2 or 3 times a year, sure. But I really wish people would stop telling me, you have a superpower, you can hyperfocus, and you're so creative. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I also think that we need to acknowledge that this is debilitating. The second fold of being really creative is that it heightens my sensory issues. I think. I really want to do more research on this, but if I had to guess, the thoughts that run through my head oftentimes are intrusive. They're intrusive thoughts, that's what they're called. So if I'm scratching at something because my clothes are bugging me, that is all I can think about, because my brain is coming up with scenarios about ways that can bother my skin. Am I going to break out in a rash? Am I going to get sores from this? Am I going to get, I don't know, all kinds of things. So the creativity, the sensory issues, they really coincide, and they make intrusive thoughts really, really bad. Let me know if you experience that as well, because that might just be me. But that is it. It's another short one for you guys, and I really wanted to say thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting Roundtable Editorial. I really hoped you liked the videos that we put out last week. I'm looking forward to having you guys in there, getting your thoughts. So tell me in the comments below, do you have sensory issues? Do you hyperfocus? Do you know how to control your hyperfocus? Because if you do, give me all your tips and tricks below. I really, really would appreciate that. And thank you so much. Happy Monday again. Bye, creatives.